Welcome to the Uncontested Podcast, talking Oklahoma City Thunder basketball and the wider NBA.
Tim Presti said, lower the hatch, load up the cannon, and get the tank out rolling.
Catch new episodes after each Thunder game and every Sunday night.
This is a house of learning doctors.
Follow The Uncontested on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to catch new content as it drops.
I mean, a cat and a dog connected together?
This is Lou Dort. You're listening to The Uncontested.
What is up? Welcome to the Uncontested Podcast. We're part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, coming to you live, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, much later than our normal Sunday live stream, as the Thunder just got done getting the doors blown off of the tank by the Kings. 126-98, a 30-point loss to the Sacramento Kings. I'm your host for the evening, Jacob Niffen. We've got Kamiar trying to stay awake.
I'm starting to think this team maybe isn't very good.
We've also got Taylor, new resident of Yukon, Oklahoma. Yukon, America.
So I've been kind of teasing there. So it's really weird. Yukon address, Piedmont schools, like a mile or so west of Deer Creek, and we're OKC utilities. It's ridiculous.
So basically what you're telling me is that I'm going to be the brownest person you're going to see in a year?
Yes, I'm going to bring Kamiar to our neighborhood pool. Everybody's going to be looking at him like, who is that?
We can have a podcast and we can call it the Minority Report.
But I do bring good news. I'm in our office in the new house, right?
There you go.
I'm not talking out the window anymore.
You don't got to lean out the window.
Summer's not yelling at you.
So, like I mentioned, we are live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So if you are joining us tonight, hop in the chat, get your questions in, react to all the stupid stuff we say. Mateo already here saying good evening. What's up, Mateo? Thank you for joining. If you were listening to the podcast version of this on your Monday commute or maybe your workout or just whenever, we appreciate you downloading the pod. Thank you so much. Drop a 5-star rating while you're listening. Write a few nice words because it's tough to podcast about the Oklahoma City Thunder right now when every game is like Groundhog Day. But gentlemen, here we are once again. The Sacramento Kings. Surprisingly, the last time these two teams played, it was a close game. The Thunder almost effed around and beat the Sacramento Kings. Tonight, though, there was no question very early on in this game. And like I mentioned, the Thunder end up losing 126-98. No Shea, no Horford, no Mike Muscala, no Ty Jerome.
No everybody.
And no Lou Dort tonight. They started an interesting lineup tonight. I guess Poku was at the 2, Bays at the 3, Roby at the 4, Moses Brown at the 5. Teo Maladone, a questionable game time decision, ended up playing tonight. So interesting lineups. But Taylor, just anything that you take away from this game? Is there anything to talk about?
I think I tweeted that there was 2 pauses from this game. And honestly, maybe there's 3 because there's one other guy I do want to go ahead and mention. But the 2 that I mentioned in my tweet were Bays, 1, and 2, Thunder lottery odds increased, which is awesome. I thought Baisley was continued to be aggressive. Only shot the ball 13 times, which I actually think is good. No, I understand like in a game like tonight.
And efficient 13 times too.
6 of 13. Absolutely good point. Very good point. But, we've seen where he's had 20-point games recently over the last 2 weeks, but he's shooting the ball like 20-something times. And he's probably only like 6 of 20 in those games. Tonight he's 6 of 13, looked much more poised, but still was aggressive, which I love to see. And I kind of tweeted this out as well, but I just this is a huge offseason, I think, for Baisley in terms of his growth. I just want to see him put on strength, physical strength, and improve that outside jumper. Because if he can do that, I think that's going to open up his game, and he's going to be efficient even with less attempts when you have guys like Shea and Dort playing regularly again, and he's in that mix. I think if he can do those 2 things, it's going to be big.
Definitely. And Kamiar, I wanted to throw this over to you real quick because Taylor just mentioned something that I've been thinking about a lot for the past couple of weeks. Darius Baisley has been incredibly inefficient. And I'm curious, how much is that due to Baisley not developing versus how much is it due to the Thunder just throwing out, lineups that include 2 10-day guys that are on 2-way contracts, and Darius Baisley, and he's kind of quote unquote the focal point of the other team's defense. And do you think that we will see a more efficient Baisley whenever we go into next season, where instead of taking 17, 18 shots a game, it's 7 or 8 shots a game, and he's playing around better NBA players and better playmakers? Is what we're seeing out of Baisley a product of Baisley not growing, or is it a product of the environment?
Well, usually on bad teams, bad players eventually have to score a lot of points, and he's not doing any of those things. So I would say he's not really making a jump. He still drives the lane without any idea with what he's going to do. His jump shot's getting a little bit better, and that's fantastic. But I mean, it's not like he's blowing the doors off of anybody. It's not like he's scoring far more than he normally would, like a Lou Dort averaging like over double-digit points. Teo Maladon is further in his development than Darius Baisley is. Pokashevsky might even be further in his development than Darius Baisley is, which is kind of
Ty Jerome probably is too.
And so, no, I'm not really worried about his future going forward, especially if OKC gets a top 5 draft pick, because I don't think Baisley is going to start for this team in the future. So to say, put it shortly, no, I don't think he's taking the steps necessary, because even on a bad team like they have been, like they've lost 21 and lost 22. Even on a bad team, they have to score points, and he's just like Lou Dort's putting up points, Mateo's putting up points, Svee's putting up points. This dude's just not putting up any sort of points whatsoever, and he's getting a ton of opportunities. So no.
Yeah, and I'm with you very much on the. He's gotten better at finishing when he drives, but he still drives frequently and gets to the rim and isn't sure what to do. Should I try to shoot a floater? Should I try to dunk it? Should I try to kick it out? He like picks up his dribble and then doesn't have a plan. And
should I argue with Coach Mark?
We'll get into that.
Yeah. To me, that's a sign of the game hasn't slowed down. Right? When the game slows down for you, you start to drive and you know what your move's going to be, and you know this guy's going to rotate and I have this pass to that corner, or I have this dump off, or I'm going to be able to get to my right hand layup. To me, it almost seems like the game hasn't slowed for him, and you hope that eventually happens. I'd be interested to hear what Baisley would have to say on that as well. If I mean, I don't know if you'd get a truthful answer, not to say that he's a liar or anything, but
probably just get mad and shut down.
Baze listens to this podcast, and he's gonna text you and tell him to stop calling him a liar.
Yeah, probably so. No, it's just I think I'm with you. I don't think Baisley is a starter on this team. Probably as early as next season, I think.
So that's something I wanted to bring up when Kamiar said that. I think he brought up a really, really good point. So
I always
if you
bring
draft
up good points.
I mean, he came up with the podcast name.
That's why we pay Kamiar the big bucks,
That's
man.
right. I copyrighted everything. I copyrighted everything. So if you guys ever decide to kick me off, I want royalties.
He can do that. But one thing that you mentioned, looking ahead, if the Thunder do land a top 5, maybe even Kamiar was kind of mentioning this before we started, even like a top 7, 8 pick, and you end up with a guy like a Scotty Barnes, like you mentioned, Kamiar. I'm not basically anybody but Mobley. Do you really want to sit those players just to start Baze? I think you want to start those players, especially with that level of talent. And that probably puts Baze on the bench. So how does he respond to that? Because like we've seen with his interactions with the media over the past season, obviously the thing with Daignault, which I don't think is a huge deal, but we'll get into, and even just, how he reacts. I don't know. There seems to be a little bit of maybe immaturity in that sense, in that regard. And him coming off the bench, losing that starting spot to a new rookie, that could be an issue for him personally. So I'm curious to see how that would, play out.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, right? And we've talked about it a lot before. I think you're going to see a lot of roster rotation this summer, almost by necessity, but it's going to be interesting to see at the end of the day when everything shakes out. And, maybe the best case scenario for this Thunder team is that Baisley is starting next year. And that means that he made a jump over the summer and he really increased his skill and his ability, and the game has slowed down. So, Taylor, any other takeaways from tonight's game?
So that's a good, Jacob. You mentioned kind of the roster exploration transition into next season. And one guy that I'm really curious about, actually two, but Josh Hall didn't really do anything tonight. But the other guy I've really kind of been keeping an eye on because I know the Thunder are at least interested in him, but probably not enough to give him a full roster spot. It might be another two-way heading into next season. And that's Jalen Horde. He had 16 points tonight on 6 of 8 shooting. Didn't attempt a single three, which is fine, but he also had 5 free throw attempts, made 4 of 5. Played 22 minutes. There was, the starters played some solid minutes as well, but there was a lot more bench minutes to be given tonight with the shortened rotation. But Jalen Horde's been playing and contributing some solid minutes throughout this stretch, especially tonight. I think on both ends, he looked more confident on the offensive end of the floor, but also was playing some good defense on the defensive end against some taller, longer, more athletic bigs and forwards that the Sacramento Kings played tonight. So I'm curious what you guys think about Josh Horde's night tonight specifically when we're talking about this game, but also long term. Like, do you guys think next season maybe he's brought on again with another two-way, or they just kind of let him go and maybe he'll get picked up by another team?
I could see him being on the OKC Blue next season, but again, like they're not going to have the roster spots, right? Somebody like Svi Mihailuk might not be on this team next year because they're not going to have the roster spots. So they're not going to give a guy like Jalen Horde or Josh Hall a roster spot. But I would not be surprised to see the Thunder want to keep those guys in-house and get them with the OKC Blue for a full season next year to see what they can do.
That's a good point.
You guys don't like Charlie Brown?
Charlie Brown.
I like Charlie Brown's hair.
Which one?
I tweeted out tonight.
Both of them. Both of them. Charlie Brown and Charlie Brown Jr.
The Schroeder streak, but like if Schroeder had long hair, I like it. I tweeted out tonight that if the Thunder do get the number 1 pick, we should put Charlie Brown's number 44 up in the rafters next to Collison because he is like the epitome, the ultimate tank commander for this OKC Thunder final stretch of the season.
And speaking of that, Kenrich Williams also gets a DNP coach's decision
Another
tonight. And somebody asked it in the chat, Taylor. I guess we could just get to it right now.
Yep.
Tony Bradley with a DNP as well. Can you pull up that chat question?
That's interesting.
By Nate
for
Sanders?
Sure. Nate. Yep, here it is.
At what point does Presti get fined for all this BS that we all know is not real?
I was wondering that tonight also.
I do not know.
I was wondering that also. Or does he not because he's a small market and they're going to let him get away with it?
Yeah.
I say get away with it. This is what we want, but
the NBA has screwed over small markets in OKC several times enough. Maybe they feel bad for him.
Yeah, there you go. Nate Sanders says, no Tony Bradley the last few games. Does this mean he's already guaranteed a spot for next year, or have they given up on him?
That's a really good question.
I think it's very fascinating. We've seen Moses Brown get a lot of burn, not Tony Bradley. Tony Bradley is in a contract year. He's a restricted free agent this summer. Is he getting DNPs because they plan on bringing him back and protecting his health? Or is he getting DNPs because they are not bringing him back and they're going to keep Moses Brown around?
They're not playing him because Moses Brown is terrible. And Tony Bradley is not that terrible. Tony Bradley was backing up Joel Embiid in Philly, and Moses Brown was backing up some guy in the G League. So, I mean, you tell me.
Yeah. Just watching Moses play tonight, Kami, I know you've harped on this a lot. There was 2 back-to-back plays where Moses' man came up, Rashawn Holmes, who hell of an NBA player, Rashawn Holmes. He was really good in Phoenix. He's killing it in Sacramento. Great guy. Rashawn Holmes came up and set a screen on the ball handler, and I don't know why this is the Thunder's defensive philosophy in this situation, but Moses Brown steps up and comes up even to the screen and like spaces his arms out and does not drop back into coverage and does not contain the pick and roll or the ball handler because he can't move quick enough. and just gets cooked in pick and roll defense like every single time. And so it's
He has
not
anchors
good.
for feet.
Bob.gif.
He's bad. He's a
Yeah.
bad player. I mean, like that's the whole point of all of this. And then plus, like honestly, like Teo's getting burned, even though like he also now has some sort of plantar fasciitis. I don't even remember who they started at the 2 because I started watching Varsity Blues in the middle of the game because the game was terrible. And then I watched the end of it. I watched Poku, and I flipped between the Sacramento broadcast, and they're like really liking Poku. They're like, man, this guy's actually really good for how young he is. So that was really cool to hear. Other fan bases talk about Pokashevsky. Or as Tim was it Bontemps that called him Alexander Pokashevsky?
Yeah, Alexander.
Yeah. You mean you weren't listening to Michael Cage talk about Count Chocula?
Oh my gosh, he talked about that.
I missed that.
And then he like tried to. What was he talking about when he just like stuttered for like 3 straight minutes? And I'm not exaggerating. It was like at least 2 minutes of him just like stuttering over and over, trying to get thoughts out.
I don't know. The good part about me having YouTube TV and League Pass is that I don't get to watch the games on my TV, so I have a stream that I watch, and so also would have to watch Bally Sports and listen to Michael Cage. But honestly, I'm not that. I think Michael Cage is okay just because like he's comedic relief because of all the dumb crap he says. I really don't like Chris Fisher. He's like he is an overcorrection to the remarks that Brian Davis made that whatever that got him fired. But Chris Fisher is like, I hate him so much and what he says because it's the most boring, obvious things in the world. I hate it. It's awful.
I think they should put us on the call.
Yes.
They should just rotate Thunder podcasts on the call.
Speaking of me moving, my next door neighbor. I'll tell you guys off the pod. I think he can get us in. I looked up who he was.
Just leave it at that because I have no clue what you're referring to right now.
I looked up who he was, and he's like he's pretty high up there. Like he can make the introduction to Tumbleson. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, for the Thunder. Okay, I thought you were talking about your next door neighbor's like a serial killer.
Oh no. I mean Thunder specific. Like
Taylor's
like you mentioned,
neighbor,
getting us in to announce
next door neighbor is actually Sam Presti. Did you guys know that?
Yeah, I'm actually next door neighbors with Sam. No, Sam's probably in Galardia or something ridiculous.
But to get us a little bit back on track here, Kamiar, you are of the belief that Tony Bradley will be back in OKC next year?
Yes, because he has been playing significant minutes, or not significant minutes, but substantial minutes in the NBA for a couple different teams. And Moses Brown, the only time he's played for a team is with the OKC Thunder when they are being awful. So
yeah,
yes,
I would not be surprised if because Moses's contract is non-guaranteed, if they do not pick it up, that would not come as a surprise at all to me. So, but that's I thought that was a really good question from Nate Sanders. I wanted to get up here real quick, and since we were on the topic of Moses Brown and whatnot. So, any other thoughts from this game? Kamiar mentioned Poku. He had missed a few games for a knee bruise, I believe. Came back tonight, did some Poku stuff again. Had a few flashes. He had early in the second half that behind the back dribble went off the dribble, beat his man, hit a finger roll. He had a really slick backdoor pass to Gabriel Deck late in the fourth quarter. Just continues to make flashes. Kamiar, you mentioned watching the Kings broadcast where they were hyping up Poku. What was it, a week and a half ago? I was watching the Toronto broadcast where they were doing the same thing. And
everybody loves watching Poku. I mean,
everybody. It's impossible to not enjoy it.
There's two things at national, usually in the past however many years, probably 10 years now, when you hear the Thunder talked about on national podcasts, national NBA podcasts, like whether it's The Ringer or ESPN, Brian Windhorse's podcast, or the Hoop Collector, whatever it may be, it was about, Russ and KD, or it was about, Russ and PG. Now it's like, the Thunder are hardcore tanking. It's kind of humorous. Also Poku.
Yeah, definitely. Let me ask you guys this before we move on. Without knowing what the draft picks are going to be for next year, without knowing who joins the roster and who leaves the roster for next season, opening night 2021-22 season, is Alexei Pokusevsky starting for the Thunder?
I want to say yes. I mean, I want to say yes.
Mm,
I think I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go. Let's get crazy.
Dude, I don't know. That's such a bad question considering like how many draft picks they have and how much
Yeah.
roster readjustment that they will have to do. A better question is if Al Horford will be on the team by then.
I think that's a pretty firm no for me.
That's a
I know it might be
that's
a little
really
bit
good
difficult
question.
to trade the contract, but I think it's a pretty firm no for me. I'm going yes with you, Taylor. I think Poku starts at the beginning of the year next year. I got a feeling.
What's he start at? I mean, and that's a conversation probably for the offseason that we'll have.
Yeah.
But that's what's fascinating to me. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he's starting it. Well, I say that. You're probably starting Lewis shooting guard, but like I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I got so disengaged in the game towards the end that I posted a tweet. I don't know if you two saw it, but I said, imagine with me for a minute. I'm going to ask you guys the question I asked on Twitter as well. I said, imagine with me for a minute that it is October 2021. The team shows up for media day and training camp. Alexei Pokusevsky is 25 pounds heavier, and he shows up with a full arm sleeve tattoo. What is the theme of his sleeve?
Oh,
What of all the things Poku could get tattooed on him, what are you going with?
The snake.
snakes.
Like a really shitty snake too.
Oh, this is tough.
Kind of
I'm
like
trying to think.
kind of because he looks like he's morphing from a human to a snake. It's what Cody kind of looks like.
Like Animorphs?
Yeah, kind of like a self portrait that what's his face used to have with the big dude.
Oh my gosh, from Minnesota.
Yeah,
The big Russian
Ooh.
guy. What was his name?
with no neck.
They had Alexei Shved, and then who was the big man? Oh, why can't I remember? Yeah, it was the big knight with the flail that was like
Yeah.
a child's drawing, and we always called it a
Yes.
self-portrait.
That
What
would be
was his
amazing.
name? That's going to drive me nuts.
We're gonna look that up.
I'll Google it while you
my
guys are
gosh.
talking.
I don't know what
I,
Poku's tattoo would be, but
I just had one and I wasn't it.
I hope
Dang
it's
it.
not tribal.
What if he's got like a big like mural of Borat? Because of that picture of him and his family at draft night.
Peklovich. Colton Davis in the chat's got us.
There it is. Yeah. there we go.
Peklovich.
Nikola
Perfect.
Pekovic.
Perfect.
Mateo says his tattoo should be of Slender Man. I
Oh
like
wait,
it.
no, Nick responded too. He got us in our chat. That's been in our Slack. That's funny.
I love it. Oh, Nick's there you go. I love it.
Pokovich. Amazing.
Yeah, I don't know what his tattoo should be. It should just be like some like
Flames.
just
Like
some like
daggers.
Cold War
Yeah.
Soviet bullshit. I don't know. All right, let's move
Putin
on.
winner.
I wanted to bring this up because this became a bit of a point of contention for Thunder fans. Because I think partially because we just haven't had
We have
much to
nothing
talk
else.
about. But after the first Thunder versus Golden State game, Warriors World on Twitter surfaced a video that was apparently on the Warriors feed, not the Thunder feed, of Bays and Coach Daignault getting into it a little bit with Bays clapping in Coach's face before they broke the huddle. A lot of differing opinions on were they like actually going at it? Was Daignault just trying to fire him up? I believe Joe Masato asked Coach
Yep, I
today
have it pulled up.
pregame. Taylor, what was that quote from Coach?
So when asked about it, Coach Daignault said, I wanted to give the team a little bit of a jolt, and he responded to it, which I really have no problem with. I felt no disrespect there, and I didn't think I was disrespectful on my end. We were fine literally seconds later. Shea was laughing at us the entire time. That's why it's a little funny. Or sorry, I emphasized little. He didn't emphasize little. I did. So Shea was laughing at us the entire time. That's why it's a little funny. It was obviously a little hot, but it wasn't an escalated situation. That's a really big deal.
Interesting. Trying to lip read the video, it's pretty clear that Daignault says something to Baze.
hmm
Baze responds, and Daignault says, "Well, then play effing harder." And
That's
fascinating.
when Bass
And then,
claps.
Baze starts clapping in his face. You can clearly see by Shea's eyes that he is laughing. Coach downplayed it, obviously, from that quote, but anything more to read into here as we play psychologist to the Thunder franchise? Is there anything to read into here, Taylor?
I don't really think so. I think Daignault's probably pretty spot on there. I don't think it was necessarily disrespectful by Baisley, and even if it was like in the moment, I think Baisley probably understood. He wasn't going to like yell at him like we saw. What was that? Gosh, what team was that now?
Pacers.
Yeah, Pacers. Thank you. Where the assistant coach got suspended, and you had what's his face? I don't remember the player's name now.
From the Pacers, Goga Patazzi.
Yes, thank you. I would totally mispronounce that name if I had remembered it. So I'm glad you did, Jacob. Teamwork, all three of us. So all that being said, I don't know if it's that huge of a deal. The only reason I think it's just something that's on Thunder fans' radar and something maybe to monitor is just because it's Baisley. And we've seen just kind of I don't even know what the right term would be here. I wanted to say rebellion, and maybe I don't think that's necessarily correct in this sense. But we saw the whole thing like at the very beginning of the season when he has media availability. He kind of chirped back at Andrew Schlecht. We've seen him just be short with the media outside of that. It's just, I don't know, some small things there that just almost show some signs of immaturity. And it just makes you wonder. So that's the only reason I think this is a thing. But I think we probably should just take Daignault for his word and not worry about it too much, like you said, Jacob.
Kamiar, thoughts?
I think there's a few things here. I think that it's all speculation, and you're not going to get the honest truth from either Baisley's side. You're not going to get the honest truth from Daignault's side either way. I think Baisley is maybe tired of losing after experiencing maybe not as many losing games last year. I think that's part of it, and he's he's having a lot more pressure put on him this year than he's probably ever had in his entire basketball playing career. You also saw a Thunder coach. Basically, you've not seen a Thunder coach act this way since probably PJ Carlesimo. Basically, kind of like getting in guys' faces and like really ripping into them. Like, never saw Scott Brooks really do that. You definitely didn't see Donovan do that. And if they did, they were very nonchalant. Of course, they had stars to cater to, so they didn't piss them off, so they wouldn't leave. But I mean, like, what Daignault is doing is something totally different than what Thunder fandom and like Thunder players, I guess, are used to. And then the whole idea with Shea laughing kind of weirds me out. It's kind of like let's say you're a classroom teacher and you're getting onto another kid, and one other kid starts laughing about it. Everybody else is just like, okay, nobody takes this seriously. So that could be a situation. But again, it's all speculation. Nobody's going to know the full truth. It's always going to be a gray area. And I think they're just ready for the off season so they can go and party and have fun and maybe lift weights.
Marcus in the chat says, well, at least Baze didn't go Spreewell.
Yeah, fair.
So, yeah,
would have been the highlight of the season. There's nothing else.
I like what you brought up again, Kamiar, about Coach Daignault. Like, if this is next season, like we've seen Daignault get a little more comfortable and starting to kind of not chirp at players, but be more assertive than we've seen OKC Thunder players or OKC Thunder coaches in the past. You don't really have that, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook that these coaches are coming into. You have Shea, right, which maybe is on that same level as when some of these other coaches like Scott Brooks and really just Scott was coming into. So next season, do we see Daignault doing that to Shea? I kind of think yes, because I think Daignault's just a guy who he doesn't really care. He's going to coach the way he coaches. I also see Shea being a player who's going to respond well to that. But I'm curious kind of to see that once the team's at full health and they're competing again.
Yeah, it's I wanted to mention that too, that, it's like Kamiar said, we haven't seen this from a Thunder coach recently, and it's interesting. I don't feel like we saw Coach do this much earlier in the season, but as the losing streak has started, we've seen him get into Poku a little bit. We've seen him get now into Bays a little bit. And so I wonder how much of it is Coach is getting more comfortable as the season is going on versus how much of it is like trying to stay on guys to not develop bad habits because they're like taking their
We're
foot off
getting
the gas
blown
a
out.
little bit because they're getting blown out. And maybe an example here. Last season when I was covering the OKC Blue, head coach Grant Gibbs, it was his first head coaching gig. And so at the beginning of the season, he was pretty quiet over on the bench. He'd like shout out some defensive assignments, call a timeout, but he was never really that vocal. But then after we got like 2 or 3 months into the season, right before the shutdown, actually, I remember sitting there on press row, like covering the game, and there's a call that coach didn't like. And you just hear him yell, man, what the, like talking to the ref, what the F are you looking at, you stupid son of a bitch? And like going off. And I was like, holy smokes. Like I did not see that coming from him, 2 months ago. And so he got more comfortable, right? He got more comfortable in his role and felt more emboldened to do those things. I wonder if there's a little bit of that happening with Daignault as well. Also, these are a bunch of young guys, right? These are a bunch of teenage kids or barely a little bit older. So I think he feels the need to be maybe a little bit more aggressive as a coach. And I think the only reason the Bays thing really became that big of a deal was, like Taylor mentioned, the Pacers incident that happened a couple of days earlier. So if Bays would have looked over at coach mid-possession and told him to sit the F down, then I think we would have had a problem. Right?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
then if Daignault was trying to fist fight him, but we didn't have that. And so, yeah, Kalmir, I think you're right in that we never will know the full truth. They're going to keep that in-house. So it is what it is. It is what it is. I need to get that drop for the podcast.
It's all speculation.
Exactly. So, gentlemen, let's move on. Really, the last time on the Sunday night pod, we will have to do a tank meter because this time next week, the season's over.
Oh, thank God.
Oh, that's so weird. Oh,
I know.
God.
But
Thank God.
That's so weird.
let's go to the tank meter.
Loser! You're a loser!
And that means that the number one pick in the NBA draft goes to...
All right, so I have some updates for the tank meter. Before we get there, though, we will start with Taylor. Taylor, if it's full, that means we're gunning for the number one pick. Empty means they're pushing for the playoffs. Where has the Thunder tank meter been this week?
I mean, it is not only full, it's like if you could flow your gas tank with gas and the meter just like breaks, it just like goes beyond full. That's where the Thunder are at.
Presty's put the gas pump like in the back window and it's just putting gas inside
continuing
the
to pump it. Yeah, exactly. The whole entire car is full of gas, much less the tank. This is from Royce Young. He just tweeted this out here a couple minutes ago. Per ESPN stats and info, the Thunder have been outscored by 490 points in their last 25 games, the worst margin of defeat by any team in any 25-game span in NBA history.
Woo!
Previous worst was the 92-93 Mavs, 489, 1 point difference there, who went 11-71 in that season. So to Kamir's point earlier, when does Sam Presti get fined? When you have stats like that coming out, makes you wonder. So you have that, and then, I'm no Justin. I don't have an analogy here. But I just recently, May 4th, last week, I got my my pre-order book in from Jake Fisher, who was a guest of the podcast here about 2-3 weeks ago, with his book Built to Lose. And I've started reading it. It's awesome. It's great. You guys should go order it. So I haven't gotten all the way through. But if we were to get all the way through, and based off this season, I think Jake might have to go back and write a whole new chapter about specifically what the OKC Thunder are doing this season. So the tank is full.
I like it. Kalmir, where are you putting the tank at?
You guys remember an artist named Daddy Yankee?
Yes.
Daddy
Gasolina.
Yankee?
Wait, no,
Yeah.
that wasn't Gaddy. Oh, wow.
I
do
am
remember
not
it. I'm trying to remember
familiar.
his song.
It sounds like a
Yankee.
country singer.
Daddy
No,
Yankee
no,
had
no,
a
no.
famous
He was like a
song called
Latino rapper.
it's called titled Gasolina.
It is Gasolina. I was right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It sounded like I'm not gonna like mumble it
Gasolina.
because that'll be if I mumbled it, I feel like that'd be mildly racist. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, they're bad and they're obviously like trying to be awful. So that makes that Boston win even more frustrating for both sides, for Boston and OKC. I don't get the hellhole Boston's in right now. Like they should be way better than they are, but regardless, it's as full as it can get. They're not going to get to that bottom number 1 spot because Houston tanked way earlier in the season than OKC started. But you blame George Hill and Al Horford for playing really well at the beginning of the season, and now only one of them plays, and Mike Muscala for not letting the tank live. So yeah, they're trying as hard as they can to tank. I just want to know what's in Presti's little green book and whose names are in those in that little green book.
Great point.
And if he
was at
writes
the
like maybe it's like a burn book, like he's writing down like how much he hates certain players and how much he loves other players.
Presti's prospect hit list.
Yeah, instead of a little black.
So what Comir is referencing is, and I wish I could give this photographer credit. I forgot. I think Stephen Dolan on Twitter did, and Thunder Film Room, they both did. But Presti was at the Allen Iverson Classic, or whatever they're calling it. Allen Iverson started some like tournament, AAU tournament circuit. This and the first one was this past weekend, and so there's a lot of like a top talent across the nation who came to this tournament, and Presti was seen there doing some scouting, and he had this like little green notebook, which was so interesting, like a little bigger than his hand, not full size notebook, super interesting.
I love it. Well, some tank updates for you guys. The Thunder, as of tonight after the Kings game, are now in sole possession of the number 3 best lottery odds. They are a half game up on Cleveland, Orlando, and Minnesota. They are a full game behind the Detroit Pistons. As Kamiar mentioned, there is no chance of catching number 1. So if the Thunder lose their final 3 games, which are Kings, Jazz, Clippers, they will at worst be tied for 3rd. That's the worst they can do if they lose out these last 3 games. One of my favorite scenarios that can still happen is Minnesota loses out, Orlando loses out, Cleveland loses out, Oklahoma City loses out, Detroit beats Minnesota in their matchup on Tuesday night, because we do have Detroit versus Minnesota Tuesday night.
That's
and then Detroit loses the rest of their games. We would end with a 5-team tie for the second best lottery odds.
Wow,
which is just
wild.
Insane. Absolutely insane. So part of me is actually kind of rooting for that, just for the craziness.
Yes.
But that is the last game, Tuesday night, Minnesota versus Detroit. That is the last matchup of any teams in the bottom 6 in the standings, or the top 6 in the lottery standings. That's the only matchup left. The Thunder are, after seeing what they did tonight, I have no doubt in my mind they're going to lose their final 3 games. Knock on wood. I have no doubt they will lose their final 3 games. And their hope is that somebody else wins the game somewhere around here. Obviously, somebody has to win that Detroit-Minnesota game. They both can't lose. But besides that, you hope somebody along the way wins a game. For instance, like Orlando plays Philly twice to end the season. Philly is really close to locking in the number one seed.
Yeah.
So does Philly rest guys down the stretch, and maybe Orlando does pull out a W, right? There is some interesting scenarios that can play out there. So
kind of to that point, I guess before we head around the association, one more stat from our own Nick Crane. He tweeted out OKC is 1-11 in their last 12 games. The 11 losses over this span has been by a combined 266 points for an average of 24.2 points per contest. With that in mind, the Thunder had sole possession of the 5th best lottery odds for the 2021 NBA draft. And And then I had one from Shams, kind of to your point that you're mentioning, Jacob. Basically, the last 2 days of the regular season, all games are being played at the same exact time. It's like a Friday and a Saturday. They're all being played between like 12 and like 3 p.m. Eastern or something like that. So basically, whether it's teams at the top or the middle of playoff contention, essentially from each conference, trying to like manipulate games to help with their matchups. They can't really do that, not nearly as well. They can't sit like key players or whatever it may be because they're all playing at the same time. And the same thing for tanking as well, right? Like, if you're a team, I guess a lot of the tanking teams are all going to want to lose. But regardless, I found that interesting. The league is playing all those games at the same exact time.
No, they all tip off, I think, within 2 hours of each other. So no game will be over. Nobody can watch. Yeah, that's fascinating. I have Tankathon pulled up. If you're watching the stream,
there we go.
We are going to do
up. There we go.
We're going to hit a sim before we move on to around the association. So here we go. Bang. 2 and 5
Boom.
in our sim.
Perfect.
Really hard to ask for anything better than that. One more spin.
Perfect.
We won't get 1 and 5 here, I don't think. Yeah, this one 5 and 7. Still not bad, but
Still
2 and
great.
5. That changes entirely the future of this franchise. So
Absolutely.
all right, gentlemen, let's take a quick run around the association before we get out of here this evening.
I don't even know where you're sitting at.
It is time that we take a chat about old Thunder friend Russell Westbrook. He is now tied Oscar Robertson for the most triple doubles in NBA history. I think it is a foregone conclusion that as early as Monday evening in Atlanta, Russell Westbrook will become the leading triple double getter in NBA history.
So this is kind of wild. He did it in exactly, not roughly, exactly 100 less games than Oscar Robertson did. Russ tied Oscar's record with 939 career games. Robertson did it in 1,039 career games. I found that interesting.
That's fascinating. If Russ plays another 100 games, he probably gets another 90 triple doubles.
Yep.
I feel pretty confident about that. So I wanted to ask you guys, most of those triple doubles obviously came in his OKC career. Is there any one that sticks out to you? We obviously had the triple double season, right? That first season that Kevin Durant left, the Russ versus the World Tour. We had a lot before then, a ton after then. Does any specific Russ triple double game stick out to you? Do you have a specific memory?
Ugh. You're putting us on the spot here, so I can't come out with any hipster, low key, non popular ones. But the 2020,
yeah, the 2020 game, the Denver game,
exactly.
Yeah, those are two big ones. 2020, shouting out a Cripset Nipsey Hussle.
Yes,
on national television. That one was pretty awesome. One that I always go back to. It's a very obscure game, and I think it was in the Russ versus the World season, early season against the Phoenix Suns. And it's the game where Russell Westbrook hit the sham god and then the assist to Steven Adams for the dunk.
Oh, that was
for
insane.
some reason, that one to me was just like the holy shit moment.
That was one of the most wild,
what about the
amazing
one
passes
where he threw behind his shoulder to Steve for the dunk and Terrence Ferguson's face got zoomed in? He was like,
"What game was that?"
That was
against tweet went viral.
The Detroit Pistons. Yeah, that tweet went viral. Doris Burke retweeted me that night. That was that was the pinnacle, man. You don't get much better than getting a retweet from the GOAT Doris.
Doris is cool.
I love Doris Burke. Yeah, that
Agreed.
assist caught me, or that assist, and then I think he got a triple double this night as well. But the game up in Toronto where he threw the full court bounce pass nutmeg between Corey Joseph's legs
That
to
was
Vic Oladipo?
wild to Depot. Yep.
You gonna act like he meant to do that?
Yeah, there's no way, but still, it was badass.
It was still perfect.
I don't care if it was intentional or not.
Oladipo was like, "Oh, the ball's in my hands now." He didn't expect it to happen. So.
He almost smoked the layup.
Yeah, because he didn't expect the pass.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I just remember being in the airport and I was about to get on a plane to go back to OKC, and I saw that they were beating the hell out of Toronto.
Do we lose Kamiar?
I think we did lose Kamiar. Uh-oh. He paused.
He was frozen. We will never know what happened whenever he was getting on that airplane.
The suspense. Goodness. You know what? You know what's really funny? Just a complete aside is Kamiar told us, because it's obviously we're starting late after a late game, that if something like this happened and it froze, that he was just going to turn off.
He was just logging off and going to sleep. So maybe
Kamiar is probably gone.
Just quit mid-sentence. All right, Taylor, just a couple more things around the association before we get out of here. Zion Williamson out indefinitely with a fractured ring finger, I believe, which comes at an interesting time because the Pelicans are knocking on the door. Only, 1.5 games behind the San Antonio Spurs for that final play-in spot. Do you think they try to get Zion back quickly to make that play-in spot? And do you think the Pelicans can get there?
It's so tough. I mean, I think they could.
Yeah, and for the record here, give me just a second. Maybe this will
this will help.
This will inform your decision.
I was trying to think in my head.
San Antonio Spurs have 5 games left.
Okay.
Suns, Nets, Bucks, Knicks.
They legit might lose out.
That is an incredibly difficult schedule.
Right.
The Pelicans have the Mavs, Lakers, Dubs, Grizzlies.
Ooh, that's tough also. So they'll win like 2 of those maybe. I can see them doing
those,
it.
they're in, man.
But there's a part of me that feels like, David Griffin, he's a smart GM. They have all this future draft capital. It just makes me wonder if he's thinking like, look, even if we do make it into the play-in tournament, that's great. But like the better odds I have in this draft, the better, essentially, right? And they aren't going to tank full on, and they don't have to next season because they have Zion and they have Brandon Ingram and they have all these young guys.
You know who's really good for them?
Super interesting to see what happens to Lonzo's offseason.
Yeah.
Who are you thinking of?
I think they're okay with if getting Lonzo like a sign and trade because
of Josh Hart,
Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Kid can hoop, man. He is really good.
I invested in his Top Shot. Got a great number, serial number. Holding on to it.
I wish we could pair the Canadian cousins here in OKC.
Oh, that'd be yes. I mean, talk about 2 guards that fit really well together. Yeah, I agree.
I would love it. Let's bring around the association full circle back to the Wizards. Are they going to be able to make noise in a first-round playoff series? Let's say they make the play-in, they win the play-in,
right,
and they get into the playoffs. They're either going to be playing against the Brooklyn Nets or the Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh, hell yes.
Is there any chance they make some noise there?
I mean, just the standard disclaimer that everybody stays healthy. Obviously, Bradley Beal was announced today as battling a little bit of a hamstring strain, which is just terrible because they've been playing so well. And I just fingers crossed, especially for Russ, being a huge Russ fan. Hold on. For those of you watching, I got to get this hanged. But you guys can see my Russ mural there from Arturo, the man. Anyways, all that
your dog after Russell Westbrook, for God's sake.
I did. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I have a Rumble and a Brody. So obviously I want this for us very badly, especially seeing the level that he's playing at again. And Bradley Beal's just been on a tear. I mean, him and Steph are going head to head for the scoring title,
yeah.
Which was really funny seeing Steph's interview.
Did you catch the end of the Wizards game on Saturday night? Russ's clutch free throws and then the block.
I didn't have cable at that point.
Okay. Yeah,
actually, I did, but I didn't watch.
They're one of the funnest teams to watch in the league right now. And I am
Absolutely.
dying to see Russ and
the
Brad
block.
Beal.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes, when Russ had the triple double, then he had the block.
I am dying to see Russ and Brad Beal in a one game for the playoffs matchup.
So that's my point, Jacob. Like, I know the past 2 seasons you've been very high on the Sixers, and like rightfully so, you've been awarded this season. You and Nick both. But like, if the Sixers get the 1 seed, and then they're like you said, they're playing the Wizards in the first round, that almost worries me for the Wizards. Although Joel Embiid, I think, will just like tear them up. But I don't know. Like, I know Ben Simmons is an incredible defender, but man, I think Russ and Beal could have a heck of a series.
Yeah, they can make some noise for sure. It would be fun. So, all right, Taylor. Well, we're gonna get out of here because it is 12:15 and we both have
we
work
have to go to work.
Any parting thoughts before we get out of here?
Tank is full on. It's just really weird to me that the Thunder only have 3 games left this season. Obviously, it's been a different season than we're accustomed to, but even then, it just feels weird. So I'm just going to cherish every minute of it, every minute of Poku, every minute of Ty Jerome, whatever we can get. And I'm just super excited for June 22nd.
Yeah, June 22nd is the day that the Xanax prescriptions in Oklahoma City
go through the roof. That's right.
The anxiety for the lottery will be very high. So, all right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining. If you were on the stream tonight, there was a handful of you. Late night tonight, man, thank you guys so much for tuning in and hanging out with us. If you listen to the podcast version of this, can't tell you how much we appreciate you. Please drop that 5-star rating and a review if you don't mind. It'll only take you a few moments. It means a ton to us, helps our podcast out a lot. So we'd really appreciate that. 3 more on deck. I think it's Tuesday, Friday, Sunday.
No pun intended there.
Yeah, our final. I like it. Our final 3 for the season. We'll be doing post-game pods after each one of those on the Locker Room app. So if you don't have the app, go download it. Join us. Those will also be in your pod feeds as well. And later this week, we will have an update for you guys on what the podcast schedule looks like for the offseason, because the Thunder might be done playing, but we are just getting started. We have draft previews, player grades, guests, the draft itself. So much coming up for you guys. We cannot wait to dive into it all with you. So until Tuesday night, when the Thunder take on the Kings for the 3rd time, you guys have a great start of your week. Stay safe, and we will talk to you soon. Tank up, Thunder down.